By the time the cameras flickered back on, it was already too late. Someone no one knew who had cut the feed for exactly 47 seconds. Just long enough for the moment to happen. Just short enough for the public to sense something was wrong. Inside the Meridian complex, the Grand Rotunda held its breath. Marble columns, echoing footsteps, a circle of power carved into stone. At 3:14 p.m. on a Tuesday that shouldn't have mattered, everything shifted. A woman's voice had risen sharp, unplanned, unfiltered. Not a speech, not a debate, a reaction. Ilara Omari's reaction. It struck the room like a crack of lightning. No one outside the chamber would understand it yet. The footage was incomplete, the audio clipped, the angles missing, but inside the guarded walls, they all felt it. And for reasons that would only become clear months later, the people who witnessed it firsthand did not walk out the same. You know this feeling. You've seen this before. That single instant where a person's life divides into before and after. This was hers. And the real story hadn't even started. The first accounts were chaotic. Some said Ilara slammed a document onto the marble desk. Others swore she whispered something that froze Marcus Train's advisors mid-step. A few insisted someone had approached her too quickly, too quietly. But there was one detail everyone missed. The moment before the feed cut, a shadow crossed the frame. Just a blur. Just long enough to raise a question, just vague enough to avoid an answer, and then nothing made sense. The official committee briefings would later bury that moment under 12 pages of procedural language. But eyewitnesses remembered it differently. The lights dimmed, one aide said. Someone walked behind her, said another. I heard a click like a lock, said a third. No two accounts matched. That was the first warning sign. Because in the Meridian complex, stories are never inconsistent unless someone needs them to be. Ilara Omari had entered the chamber with a calm, practiced confidence. She always did. Even her critics admitted that. But something in her eyes that day was different. Attention, a weight, a truth she hadn't decided whether to reveal or carry alone. She walked with purpose, but not certainty, delivered her notes, but not her intentions, sat down, but didn't settle. People close to her would later say she barely slept the night before. Something had woken her at 2:37 a.m., a message she never shared, a call she never logged. Or maybe it was something simpler, some instinct she'd learned to trust. She just didn't know what was coming. To the public, Ilara Omari was a rising figure, brilliant, divisive, impossible to ignore. But inside the Meridian complex, she was more complicated than any headline suggested. A daughter of factory workers, raised under neon signs and late-night TV glow. Homework done in the back of her parents' diner. A life shaped by long highways, quiet worries, and a dream she couldn't explain until much later. Her backstory wasn't polished. It wasn't crafted for a campaign. It was something she carried with a tenderness few ever saw. A childhood scar, physical, yes, but deeper in meaning. A reminder that life never waited for permission to change. A reminder that fear taught discipline. And for years, she thought discipline was enough. But the complex had rules she didn't understand, and expectations she never agreed to follow. Ilara was many things. Predictable was not one of them. And that was her invisible danger. Minutes before the event, she sat alone in her assigned chamber seat, tightening the cap on her pen until her knuckles whitened. People who knew her well would later say that was her tell. The gesture she made when preparing for a moment she wasn't ready to face, a moment that demanded more honesty than strategy. Her phone buzzed once, a silent vibration against the metal desk. She didn't check it. Then again, buzz, buzz, buzz. 3 times. Not a message, not a call, a signal. The kind used by only one person, and only when something had gone terribly wrong. You felt this once, haven't you? That instant when your body recognizes danger before your mind does, Ilara's chest tightened, her breath shortened, her pen slipped. But she didn't react outwardly. She couldn't. Not here, not in front of them. By the time she raised her eyes, the room had already changed. Marcus Train's advisors had entered the rotunda unexpectedly, quietly, strategically. They moved with a precision that didn't belong to politics, more like choreography, more like intent. And for the first time in months, Ilara felt the air shift against her. Then came the 47 seconds. The footage cut. The microphones went dead. Every live stream froze. Security claimed it was a technical glitch. IT blamed a network irregularity. The committee spokesperson called it routine maintenance. But the staff inside the chamber, they told a different story. The doors locked. A guard repositioned. Someone whispered. Someone else gasped. A chair scraped. A palm hit the desk. The faint rustle of paper. Then Ilara's voice. Sharp, uncontrolled, real. It cut through the silence like a blade through fabric. What are you doing here? 7 words. No context, no calm, no political polish, just raw human alarm. You know this feeling. You've lived it. The moment you realize the situation isn't what you were told, that someone else arrived with their own plan, that something beneath the surface has shifted quietly, intentionally, irrevocably, and that you are no longer an observer, you are the target. When the feed snapped back, Ilara was standing, her hands on the desk, her eyes locked forward, her breath unsteady. Behind her, the shadow was gone. In front of her, every advisor in Marcus Train's cluster was watching with unreadable stillness. The chair of the committee asked her to proceed with her prepared statement. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. For 7 full seconds, the room froze inside her silence. There are moments when the human soul reveals itself not through words, but through what it cannot bring itself to say. This was one of those moments. And yet, there was one detail everyone missed. Her left hand, trembling ever so slightly, was covering the pocket where her phone lay buzzing moments earlier. A signal, a warning, a truth she wasn't ready to expose. Not yet, because the message she received wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible. And the person who sent it shouldn't have been able to send anything at all. But that is another story. One we are only beginning to uncover, because the real danger wasn't what happened during those 47 seconds. It was why they happened and who needed them to. The cracks spread quietly, and here's the part almost no one saw. The moment Ilara raised her eyes toward the gallery, someone was already watching her. Not the advisors, not the reporters, not the guards, someone else. Someone whose presence would rewrite everything she thought she understood about power. But the real story hadn't even started. By the time Ilara Omari stepped out of the chamber, her pulse still hadn't settled. She walked quickly, too quickly for someone who wanted to appear calm. Her heels echoed through the marble corridor like a metronome for panic. Clack, clack, clack. You know this sound, the sound of someone trying to outrun a truth they don't yet understand. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the cluster of aides pretending not to stare, ignoring the cameras still resetting after the blackout, ignoring the whispers. But she couldn't ignore the message burning inside her pocket, the impossible message. Her phone vibrated once more, not a call, not a notification, just that same silent triple beat, buzz, 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 a code she'd only ever shared with one person. And that person shouldn't have been able to reach her. Not today. Not from where they were. Not from where they were supposed to be. Yet the signal had come anyway, cutting through every layer of security like it was nothing. The Meridian complex had seen its share of secrets, its share of moves made behind soundproof doors. But even here, some codes weren't meant to echo, and this one echoed like a scream, but something in her was shifting. You felt that shift too, the moment the world around you suddenly stops feeling safe. Ilara didn't slow down. Even when a security officer stepped aside to let her pass, her breath stayed shallow, her steps stayed sharp, and the message stayed unanswered. The Meridian Complex was built to intimidate, not with force, but with history. Stone arches, oil portraits, long corridors where your footsteps return to you like unwanted memories. Ilara had never been intimidated by this place, not even on her first day, not even when she stood under the 1,000-pound chandelier that had witnessed more decisions than any human ever would. But today, as she made her way through the West Wing, the walls felt closer, the air felt heavier, the silence felt engineered. Some places don't need threats, their architecture is the threat. And the complex was one of them. You know this feeling, that pressure in your chest, that instinct telling you something is about to break. Ilara pulled her badge across the scanner. A soft click opened the private hallway. She entered alone. Most people assumed Ilara was fearless. They weren't entirely wrong. She'd survived childhood in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered more often than they shone, where the diner her parents ran stayed open until 3 a.m. Because late-night truckers and out-of-work factory workers needed a place to feel less alone, where she learned that humans weren't made to be strong, they were made to adapt. Her childhood scar, thin, pale, barely visible beneath her left wrist, came from an accident in the diner kitchen, an oil spill. A moment of distraction, a lesson learned too young. Her mother had wrapped her arm in a cold cloth and whispered, "Pain teaches attention. Attention saves you later." Ilara lived by that. But today, attention wasn't saving her. It was suffocating her. The closer she got to her office, the stronger her instincts screamed. Something was wrong. Not political wrong, human wrong. She pushed open her office door. The light was on. That wasn't normal. Her staff always turned it off when she was away, a small habit learned from growing up in a place where you didn't waste electricity because you couldn't afford to. Ilara paused in the doorway, scanning the room with careful, measured eyes. Desk untouched, files stacked neatly, laptop closed. Everything looked perfect, and that was the problem. Real offices aren't perfect. People leave traces. A pen out of place, a chair slightly angled, a coffee ring on the wood, but her office looked sterilized, controlled, reset. Someone had been here, someone patient, someone precise, someone who didn't want her to know they had come, but didn't mind if she sensed it. Because the real message wasn't what they touched, it was what they didn't touch. A subtle line, a silent threat. And that was the detail everyone missed. Her phone buzzed again. Buzz, buzz, buzz. She finally pulled it out. One message. No name, no number. Just a single line. They moved the meeting. You weren't supposed to be there alone. Her stomach clenched. The code wasn't wrong. The sender wasn't fake. She knew exactly who it was. And the fact that this person reached her today meant the rules had changed. Her vision narrowed, her hands shook, her breath hitched. No, this couldn't be real. But it was. She opened the encrypted Vault app, typed the sequence only 2 people knew, waited for the authentication to cycle, green light. She tapped the sender ID, it revealed one name, Ames Calder, and that was impossible. Ames Calder had disappeared 9 months ago, officially on extended leave, unofficially presumed compromised, unofficially presumed gone. Ames was the one who taught her the triple buzz code, the one who warned her never to ignore it, the one who told her, if you ever get this signal, it means someone changed the script. Ilara's knees weakened. Because if Ames was alive, someone had been lying. Not a little lie, not a political lie, a foundational lie, the kind that redefines everything. And if Ames could reach her inside the Meridian complex, Someone had breached the system's deepest firewalls that required access, resources, power. And there was only one cluster in Washington with that reach: Marcus Trains. Ilara sat at her desk, her hands trembling over the keyboard. She typed a reply. 3 words: "Where are you?" No answer. The typing bubble appeared, then vanished, appeared, vanished again, then nothing. Silence. Total silence. The kind that felt engineered. She stared at the screen until her eyes burned. This moment. The moment someone you trust tries to speak and is interrupted by what? You don't know. But the fear lands anyway, because silence isn't neutral. Silence is a verdict. She leaned back in her chair, her throat tight. Ames's survival wasn't the real shock. The real shock was the timing. Why today? Why during her unscheduled reaction in the chamber? Why during the blackout? Why reach out now, after 9 months of nothing? There was only one answer that made sense. Ames knew something about what happened in those 47 seconds, and someone didn't want that truth getting out. Which meant Ilara wasn't reacting to the event. She was reacting to the beginning of a larger design, something hidden, something coordinated, something she wasn't supposed to see, but she had accidentally, unexpectedly, irreversibly. And now her life had diverged into before and after. Because there was one more detail, the one she hadn't noticed yet. Her office camera had turned itself on. A tiny red light, silent, watching. And someone was watching from the other side. Not Ames, not a staffer, not a technician, someone else. Someone who knew she would discover it. Someone who wanted to see her reaction. The person behind the shadow in the chamber. The person who ordered the blackout. The person whose presence was never meant to be visible. The one who had just stepped out of the quiet into her world, into her story, and into her line of sight. This wasn't about politics. It was about control. And Ilara hadn't yet realized the real story hadn't even started. The red camera light stared at her like an unblinking eye. Ilara froze. Her breath caught in her throat, because the real danger wasn't what happened during those 47 seconds. It was why they happened and who needed them to. The cracks spread quietly, and here's the part almost no one saw. The moment Ilara raised her eyes toward the gallery, someone was already watching her. Not the advisors, not the reporters, not the guards, someone else. Someone whose presence would rewrite everything she thought she understood about power. But the real story hadn't even started. By the time Ilara Omari stepped out of the chamber, her pulse still hadn't settled. She walked quickly, too quickly for someone who wanted to appear calm. Her heels echoed through the marble corridor like a metronome for panic. Clack, clack, clack. You know this sound, the sound of someone trying to outrun a truth they don't yet understand. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the cluster of aides pretending not to stare, ignoring the cameras still resetting after the blackout, ignoring the whispers. But she couldn't ignore the message burning inside her pocket, the impossible message. Her phone vibrated once more. Not a call, not a notification, just that same silent triple beat. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A code she'd only ever shared with one person. Her fingers hovered over the desk, not touching, not retreating, just suspended in a moment too fragile to break. You know the stillness where instinct whispers, don't move. They're already watching. She leaned back slightly, pretending she hadn't noticed, pretending she hadn't seen the light, pretending she was still in control. But she wasn't. And for the first time since entering the complex, she felt truly alone, because the camera wasn't recording her for security. Cameras in private congressional offices never turned on without permission, especially not without indicators, especially not without a staff request. This was manual, deliberate, coordinated. Someone didn't want to hear her. Someone wanted to read her. Her posture, her breath, her micro-reactions. Someone was profiling her stress, and someone was enjoying it. This wasn't new to Ilara. She had spent years studying how power behaved when it thought no one else was looking. She'd watched committee chairs tilt their heads when lying, watched lobbyists adjust their cufflinks when nervous, watched political veterans smile with their mouths and not their eyes. But today, she was the one being examined, and the realization pressed down on her spine like a cold hand. She needed to move. She needed to break the frame. She stood too abruptly, and crossed the room to the bookshelf. Her reflection glimmered in the glass cabinet door. She forced her breath steady, even though her pulse slammed like a fist against her ribs. She needed to look purposeful, calm, predictable. Predictability was safety, at least temporarily. But deep inside, something was shifting. A quiet panic blooming beneath her ribs, an instinct she hadn't felt since childhood, the instinct that said, "You're not the one holding the script anymore." She reached for a book. She didn't need an old legislative history text. Her fingers hovered over the spine, but her eyes didn't focus on the book. Her eyes focused on the camera's reflection in the glass. It wasn't just on, it was tracking. A tiny lens pivoted as she moved, very slowly, very quietly, but unmistakably following her. Her throat tightened, her vision blurred at the edges. Someone wasn't just watching. Someone was studying. You've seen this pattern before, haven't you? Expectation, disruption, contradiction, moral pressure. This was the disruption, the worst kind, the one that pretends to be normal. Ilara let her hand drop to her side, her muscles tensed. Her mind raced. If the camera was compromised, then so was the network. Her laptop, her phone, her encrypted vault, her messages, Ames's signal, the blackout, the shadow. It was all connected, but not in the way she feared, in a way she hadn't yet dared to imagine. And then a single detail fractured everything. She stepped back toward her desk, her movements measured, rehearsed, almost robotic. Whoever was monitoring her didn't need to see panic, not yet. She sat down and opened her laptop, not because she trusted it, but because she needed to appear functional. The screen blinked awake, her email loaded. Then, a new tab opened on its own, a white screen, blank except for one blinking cursor in the center. Ilara's breath vanished. A message typed itself slowly, deliberately, like fingers she could not see were tapping the keys one by one. Are you alone? Her skin went cold. Someone was inside her system, someone who knew exactly where she was looking, how she was sitting, how she was breathing. Someone who had waited for the exact moment she discovered the camera. Someone who wanted this moment to terrify her. This wasn't just surveillance. This was theater. She didn't type back. She didn't blink. Her hands remained in her lap. Her face remained neutral. A second line appeared. Don't turn around. Ilara's chest compressed. Her eyes flicked to the camera. It tilted down a fraction of an inch. Whoever was controlling it was in real time, communicating, responding, watching. Ilara felt the blood drain from her face. There were only two possibilities. Either Ames wasn't the one who sent the signal, or Ames wasn't alone. Both possibilities were dangerous. Both possibilities were devastating. But only one possibility truly terrified her. Someone inside the Meridian complex was using the building's security systems without clearance. Someone with access. Someone with authority. Someone who had overridden the internal protocols. Someone who operated above the normal chain of command. Marcus Train's cluster had power, but even they weren't officially allowed to breach private office systems. So this wasn't official. This was covert. This was intentional. This was a move. And Ilara had no idea why she was the target. She stared at the screen. The cursor blinked, paused, blink, blink. Then a third line appeared. You weren't supposed to speak today. A chill tore through her. Her reaction in the chamber, the unplanned outburst, had been spontaneous, genuine, human. But someone knew she wasn't supposed to speak. Someone expected her silence. Someone had planned for it. She typed one word, her first reply, why? The screen froze. For several seconds, nothing appeared. Then, because the room wasn't empty, Ilara's eyes burned, her throat twisted. Her mind replayed the shadow behind her, the blackout, the 34 seconds of silence, the gasp, the faint footsteps, the heat on the back of her neck. She had assumed it was a staffer, or a guard, or an advisor. But what if it wasn't? What if someone else was there unlisted, unseen, unauthorized? Her fingers trembled. She typed again. Who? Another pause, longer this time. Then the answer, the one who moved your meeting. Ilara's pulse exploded. The meeting, the reason she was alone in the chamber at that exact moment, the reason AIM sent the signal. Someone had changed her schedule without recording it. Someone wanted her isolated. Someone wanted her vulnerable. Someone wanted her reaction. The camera light blinked again twice, this time almost like amusement. And slowly, another message appeared. You weren't meant to notice. Ilara stood up. Her chair scraped the floor sharply. She didn't care if whoever was watching noticed her fear now. She walked to the door, heart pounding. Her hand hovered above the handle. She wasn't sure if she should leave, because the real danger wasn't what happened during those 47 seconds. It was why they happened, and who needed them to. The cracks spread quietly, and here's the part almost no one saw. The moment Ilara raised her eyes toward the gallery, someone was already watching her. Not the advisors, not the reporters, not the guards, someone else. Someone whose presence would rewrite everything she thought she understood about power. But the real story hadn't even started. By the time Ilara Omari stepped out of the chamber, her pulse still hadn't settled. She walked quickly, too quickly for someone who wanted to appear calm. Her heels echoed through the marble corridor like a metronome for panic. Clack, clack, clack. You know this sound, the sound of someone trying to outrun a truth they don't yet understand. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the cluster of aides pretending not to stare, ignoring the cameras still resetting after the blackout, ignoring the whispers. But she couldn't ignore the message burning inside her pocket, the impossible message. Her phone vibrated once more. Not a call, not a notification, just that same silent triple beat. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A code she'd only ever shared with one person. She wasn't sure if she should stay. She wasn't sure if the hallway was safer than the room. But she was sure of one thing. The Meridian Complex wasn't just a building today. It was a trap. She pulled the door open and stopped dead. A figure stood at the end of the hall, still, silent, watching, not moving, not speaking, just waiting. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't an aide. It wasn't security. It wasn't anyone she recognized. But she recognized the stance, the posture, the presence. You've seen this posture before. The posture of someone with training, someone who studies environments before entering them, someone who knows how to vanish between camera angles. Ilara's voice barely made a sound. Who sent you? The figure didn't answer, didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched. Like they already knew her next question, like they were waiting for her to say it. And she did, barely above a whisper. What happened during the blackout? The figure inhaled, a slow, controlled breath, and then they stepped forward. One step, only one, but it was enough. Because the moment their foot touched the floor, Ilara knew they weren't here to warn her, they were here to confirm something, something she wasn't supposed to know, something that would pull her into the heart of the Meridian Complex's most guarded secret. The truth didn't break her. Her denial did, and the real story hadn't even started. There is a rule in the Meridian Complex, one carved not in stone, but in fear. Power does not meet in the open, not when the stakes reach the bone, not when the truth can undo an entire institution, but on a cold Thursday night, in a windowless room beneath the East Wing, that rule was broken. And the people who were there would spend the next decade pretending they weren't. You hear the echo before you see the room, a hollow thud as the magnetic lock seals shut, cutting the space off from the rest of the complex. Inside are three figures. Two are expected, one is not. Marcus Train sits at the far end of a steel conference table, leaning back, hands folded like someone who has never once doubted his place in history. His presence alone compresses the temperature of a room. Even stripped of office, stripped of title, stripped of ceremonial authority, he still commands the air. Beside him, Dorian Hale, his longtime strategist, tall, hawk-eyed, calculating. A man who speaks in half sentences and thinks in blueprints. And then there is the unexpected arrival, the fracture in the timeline, the spark beneath everything this documentary is trying to unravel. Senator Calden Rusk, a man who famously hates Train, a man who built an entire brand on opposing him, a man who once swore he would rather drink battery acid than collaborate with him, and yet here he is, in a locked room at 10:42 p.m., sitting across from the man he vowed to bury. This was the moment everything changed for Ilara Omari. Not the vote, not the speech, not the uprising in her district. This meeting, this unbelievable off-record convergence, was the first seismic vibration beneath her career. And the public never heard about it, not until now. You gotta understand something. Rusk walking into that room was like watching gravity reverse. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. What were they meeting about? A pause. You won't believe me if I tell you. Train breaks the silence first. Let's skip the theater, he says. Smooth, controlled, annoyingly confident. He taps a folder on the table. No markings, no emblem, just a plain beige front. Rusk doesn't look at it. He looks at Train. You think I'm doing this for you? Rusk says, voice sharp enough to cut the table in half. I think, Train replies, you're doing this because Ilara Omari isn't just a problem for me. She's a problem for all of us. Hale slides the folder across the metal surface. It stops in front of Rusk. Rusk hesitates for half a second, a micro-expression that would mean nothing to the world, but everything to the people in that room. Then he opens it. We never see the pages. Not in this documentary. Not yet. All we hear is the rustling of paper, the tightening of Rusk's jaw, the sound of his certainty bending like heated steel. After 30 seconds, he speaks, she'll never go along with that. Train smiles, a slow knowing smile. She already has, he says. Just not willingly. The room freezes, the air seems to pulse. Even in a retelling, you can feel something is wrong, very wrong. When I first heard about this meeting, my assumption was pretty simple. Train wanted leverage, Hale wanted control, Rusk wanted protection. But after digging deeper, I realized something far more unsettling. They weren't trying to stop Ilara Omari. They were trying to anticipate something she wasn't even aware she was part of. Rusk closes the folder. His voice is different now, lower, shaken at the edges. What you're proposing, this is insane. Hale finally speaks. It's necessary. Train nods. You and I both know Ilara is about to step into a minefield. The question is whether she brings the whole complex down with her. Rusk stands abruptly, chair scraping the floor. You're talking about a sitting congresswoman. I'm talking, Train interrupts, about someone who doesn't understand the machine she just walked into. A beat, another. Rusk exhales hard, the kind of exhale people make when their morals are losing a fistfight with their survival instincts. Then he says the line that will haunt him for years. What do you need from me? And there it is. The moment the fault line opens, the point where three men who could barely exist in the same hallway suddenly found themselves aligned by fear of a woman who had no idea they were even looking her way. Ilara Omari didn't know about this meeting. She didn't know she had become the subject of a classified conversation between her greatest political rival, his cold-eyed strategist, and the senator who once promised to keep him out of power forever. She didn't know her name, sat inside a beige folder that would trigger a chain reaction across the Meridian complex, and she didn't know, not yet, that her next move would determine whether she became a symbol or a casualty. This was the meeting that never should have happened, because once the door closed behind them, nothing in the Union States was ever the same again. There is a strange phenomenon in the Meridian complex, a kind of political gravity, because the real danger wasn't what happened during those 47 seconds. It was why they happened and who needed them to. The cracks spread quietly, and here's the part almost no one saw. The moment Ilara raised her eyes toward the gallery, someone was already watching her. Not the advisors, not the reporters, not the guards, someone else. Someone whose presence would rewrite everything she thought she understood about power. But the real story hadn't even started. By the time Ilara Omari stepped out of the chamber, her pulse still hadn't settled. She walked quickly, too quickly for someone who wanted to appear calm. Her heels echoed through the marble corridor like a metronome for panic. Clack, clack, clack. You know the sound of someone trying to outrun a truth they don't yet understand. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the cluster of aides pretending not to stare, ignoring the cameras still resetting after the blackout, ignoring the whispers. But she couldn't ignore the message burning inside her pocket, the impossible message. Her phone vibrated once more, not a call, not a notification, just that same silent triple beat, buzz, 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 a code she'd only ever shared with one person. When something shifts in the underbelly, the hallways feel it first. Before any headline, before any vote tally, before the cameras even warm their lenses, it starts as a silence, a tightening, a vibration underneath the marble floors. And on the morning after the secret meeting between Marcus Train, Dorian Hale, and Senator Rusk, that vibration became a pulse directed at one woman, Ilara Omari. Cold fluorescent lights flickering on, security gates unlocking, staffers moving with the kind of urgency you only see after someone, somewhere, learned something they shouldn't have. No one speaks her name, but you hear it anyway. In the half-whispered side glances, in the hurried footsteps, in the sudden stiffness, whenever she appears at the end of a hallway, something is happening, something she can feel but cannot see. The camera stays close behind her shoulder as she walks through the east entrance. Coat still wet from the morning rain, hair braided tight, eyes sharp, focused. She notices it immediately, the shift, the stillness, the way conversations die the moment she turns the corner. It's subtle, but Ilara Omari is not someone who misses subtle. She pauses at the security desk. "Everything all right today?" she asks the guard. The guard doesn't look up. "Smooth morning, Congresswoman, smooth." That's the word they always use when they're hiding something. She keeps walking. You could see the change that day. The whole building moved, like it was trying not to make noise around her. Did she know why? A long pause. She knew they knew something, but she had no idea what. On her desk sits a manila envelope. No markings, no sender, no staffer would claim to have dropped it off. Just like the beige folder from the night before, inside a single page, typed, no signature, no seal, just 3 lines, you walking into their trap. Stop the resolution. You don't know what you're touching. Ilara reads it twice, then a third time. Her heartbeat slows. Her breath tightens. She is not a woman who scares easily. But cryptic warnings left on her desk? That's not politics. That's a precursor, a signal, a threat, or a lifeline. Anonymous warnings inside the Meridian complex are rare. They don't just happen. Someone risks a career or worse, leaving something like that. So you think it came from inside? Of course it came from inside. Only insiders know which trap she was walking into. She sits at her desk, staring at the page. The room feels smaller, quieter, more predatory. Her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. They met last night. Train. Hail. Rusk. You don't have much time. She feels the floor tilt. Not physically, psychologically. A meeting like that should be impossible, politically suicidal, physically improbable, emotionally unthinkable, which means it must be about her. But why? What could possibly unite three men who agree on nothing? What do they know that she doesn't? Ilara was about to introduce Resolution 7H42, and that was the detonator. What do you mean? That resolution wasn't just another policy proposal, it was a key to a door nobody wanted opened. And she didn't know that? No, she thought she was pushing transparency, accountability, democratic oversight, a grim smile. But inside this building, transparency is the most dangerous threat of all. She dials her chief of staff. Where did this envelope come from, she asks. We didn't put anything on your desk. What about late delivery? Courier? Night crew? No one entered your office after 9 p.m. Ilara's voice hardens. Find out who sent it. She hangs up. Her hand trembles just once, barely visible. Then she steadies it. Because this is what separates Ilara Omari from everyone else in this place. When she's pushed into a corner, she doesn't retreat. She calculates, she adapts, she advances. We cut to a slow motion shot of the Meridian Complex's central clock. The hands move with heavy inevitability, because whatever happened in that sealed room the night before, whatever plan Marcus Train and Dorian Hale slid across that steel table, whatever bargain Senator Rusk agreed to, it is already in motion. A countdown has begun, and Ilara Omari is running out of hours. She doesn't even know she's losing. The narrator's voice softens, deepens. She thinks she's preparing for a vote, but what she's really walking toward is a collision. A collision with a machine designed long before she arrived, one that does not forgive curiosity, does not tolerate disruption, and does not allow accidents. Ilara Omari is now at the center of a storm she can't see, and the people who started it are already 3 steps ahead. This is the day the game began. Not with a speech, not with a scandal, but with a whisper, a warning, and a clock no one could stop. There's a rule inside the Meridian Complex, an unwritten one, one the Marble won't ever admit, but every strategist knows by heart. If you want to predict the storm, you start with the man who lit the smallest match. And in this story, that man wasn't Ilara Omari, wasn't Senator Rusk, wasn't even the whisperer who slid warnings across her desk. It was Marcus Train. Even after stepping away from public office, his shadow hasn't left this place. Power doesn't vanish. It lingers. It echoes. It waits. Marcus Train has always understood that better than anyone. To some, he's a visionary. To others, a threat. To everyone, a gravitational force. The kind of figure whose decisions don't just alter headlines, they alter trajectories. And 3 nights ago, in a private dining room overlooking Providence Square, he made a decision that would drag Ilara Omari into a confrontation she never asked for. One so quiet, the city slept through it. One so consequential, the Union States would not. Dark wood, muted lighting, a city humming below. Marcus Train sits alone at the table, a full glass untouched, coat still on, eyes locked on the door. He's waiting for someone. The air feels like static, anticipation mixed with calculation. Then the door cracks open. Dorian Hale steps inside, not smiling, not pretending, just closing the door gently behind him, as if he knows the conversation inside this room will never exist anywhere else. No greetings, no handshake, no performance. This isn't a meeting. This is a collision. Train starts. She filed it. Because the real danger wasn't what happened during those 47 seconds. It was why they happened and who needed them to. The cracks spread quietly, and here's the part almost no one saw. The moment Ilara raised her eyes toward the gallery, someone was already watching her. Not the advisors, not the reporters, not the guards, someone else. Someone whose presence would rewrite everything she thought she understood about power. But the real story hadn't even started. By the time Ilara Omari stepped out of the chamber, her pulse still hadn't settled. She walked quickly, too quickly for someone who wanted to appear calm. Her heels echoed through the marble corridor like a metronome for panic. Clack, clack, clack. You know this sound, the sound of someone trying to outrun a truth they don't yet understand. She kept her eyes forward, ignoring the cluster of aides pretending not to stare, ignoring the cameras still resetting after the blackout, ignoring the whispers. But she couldn't ignore the message burning inside her pocket, the impossible message. Her phone vibrated once more. Not a call, not a notification, just that same silent triple beat, buzz, 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 a code she'd only ever shared with one person. Hale doesn't react. Resolution 7H42, train continues. She actually filed it. Hale exhales slow, practice, precise. Then she doesn't know what she's holding, and that's the problem, Train replies. If Marcus Train wanted to stop something, he never did it loudly. He'd find the single thread, pull it once, and the whole fabric came apart. Is that what this meeting was? No, this was bigger. This was him choosing which fabric to burn. Train leans forward. If 7H42 passes, the Oversight Committee gets access to the Meridian Archive logs. Hale's jaw muscles tighten. That cannot happen, he says. Train's voice drops lower. They'll see everything, Dorian, every request, every corridor access record, every off-docket meeting, a pause, and they'll see you. Hale looks away, for the first time, shaken. Not by guilt, not by exposure, but by the reality that he no longer controls the timeline. Train continues. We have one window, maybe 2 days. After that, the public hearings begin. Hale swallows hard. So what do you want to do? Train doesn't blink. Shift the ground beneath her. And that phrase, shift the ground beneath her, would become the quiet hinge on which this entire story turned. Because Marcus Train never attacked directly. He didn't need to. He attacked the conditions around you, the assumptions beneath you, the timing ahead of you. He didn't move the pieces, he moved the board. Train takes out a folded sheet of paper, not digital, not encrypted, just ink on fiber. Old school, untraceable. He slides it across the table. Hale stares. What is this? Train answers a misdirection, a narrative tilt, a way to make her look like she's reaching too far, too fast, too recklessly. Hale scans the paper. You want to isolate her? No, Train replies. I want her to isolate herself. That distinction, that cold, calculated precision, says everything. He isn't orchestrating her downfall. He's creating the conditions where she'll appear to be the architect of her own mistake. It's the kind of strategy that doesn't show up in textbooks. It shows up in warnings, whispers, shadows, unsent messages, manila envelopes that no one claims. Train understood perception like a surgeon understands anatomy. He didn't cut, he separated. He didn't attack, he redirected. What was he redirecting in this case? Ilara Omari's momentum, her credibility, her advantage. And why her? Because she was opening a box that everyone else had spent decades keeping shut. Train finishes outlining the plan. Hale nods slowly, absorbing each step. Finally, he asks, what about Senator Rusk? We'll need him. Train's answer is immediate. He'll show up when the time is right. How do you know that? Because he's already scared. And that single line reveals more about this world than any archive ever could. Fear doesn't just motivate people. It shapes institutions, it designs systems, it rewrites alliances. And in the Meridian complex, Fear is currency. Marcus Train spends it wisely. Hale extends a hand. This time, Train takes it. A silent pact, a dangerous one. A pact that would ripple outward until it reached the one person still unaware that her fate was being drafted. 7 floors above Providence Square, Ilara Omari. Train gathers his coat, pauses in the doorway, doesn't look back. He leaves Hale alone at the table, paper unfolded, city lights glowing against his face. Hale whispers one line to himself, "This is going to get messy." And when the camera pulls back, when the lights dim, when the frame freezes on that single sheet of paper, you hear it. A line delivered softly, as if the truth is too heavy to speak loudly. The fire didn't start in Ilara's office. It started here, with 2 men, 1 plan, and a match they hoped no one would ever see. There's a room beneath the Meridian Complex that most people don't know exists. A room with no windows, no signage, no visible entrance, unless you already know where to look. It's called Sublevel K, but inside the building, people use a different name, the Night Files, because that's where information goes when it isn't supposed to exist during the day. And on the same morning, Ilara Omari received her silent warning. That room was already awake and waiting for her, concrete, pipes humming. A long corridor illuminated by a sickly yellow glow. A lone archivist walks through it, badge swaying, breath echoing against steel. He pushes open the reinforced door. It creaks heavy, reluctant. Inside, rod-stacked shelves, password-protected terminals. Anonymous file boxes labeled only with single letters. The kind of place designed not to be remembered. He sets down a folder, a new one, stamped with one single marking, 7H42. That room wasn't built for storage. It was built for containment. Containment of what? Information that didn't belong in daylight. So, secrets, silence, then a nod. And the moment a resolution touches a night file, the game has already changed. Ilara Omari moves through the main atrium, papers tucked against her chest, eyes scanning every shadow. The warning from the envelope still gnaws at her. You're walking into their trap. Stop the resolution. You don't know what you're touching. But Ilara isn't built for retreat. She is built for confrontation. She steps into the elevator, hits sublevel 2, then the hidden key lock for K, the lift shutters, drops, keeps dropping, no lights, only the mechanical groan of descent. When the doors open, she steps into a world she's never seen, a world she wasn't meant to. The air is colder, thicker, carrying the weight of decades. Ilara walks carefully, her footsteps the only sound. Her hand brushes the metal racks. Dust, heat signatures, residual static, and then she sees it, a folder resting on the central table. Nothing else around it. No workers, no motion, just the folder labeled 7H42. Her resolution, her file, already here. Already cataloged, already flagged, not audible, internal, instinctive. A shift in her breathing, a tightening of her jaw. Something is wrong, deeply wrong. She picks up the folder, opens it, and freezes. Inside is not her proposal, not her transparency mandate, but a cross-referenced index of unauthorized entries, unscheduled corridor clearances, nighttime directional logs, all traced back to Senator Rusk's office. Her mind races. Why would he be connected? Why would her resolution pull his footprints? Why would the night files bind the two of them together unless someone needed them to? When a file shows up in the night archive before an official review, it means one of two things, which are, 1, someone is trying to hide something, or two, someone is trying to frame someone else. A pause. With 7H42, it might have been both. As she flips deeper through the pages, her breath sharpens, a name appears, a timestamp, a corridor she recognizes. But it's not Rusk's name, not Hale's, not even Marcus Train's. It's someone she never expected, someone whose career depends entirely on staying invisible. Nathaniel Crow, a compliance officer, a gatekeeper of audit logs, a man who shouldn't appear anywhere in a high-level file. She whispers his name under her breath. Nathaniel, what did you do? You have to understand, Crow never made mistakes. His whole job was making sure no one else's mistakes were visible. So why would he be in the file? Because he wanted someone to see it. Ilara freezes, the lights hum. Pipes groan. Something metallic clicks in the distance. She turns slowly. A figure stands in the doorway, half-shadowed, motionless, watching. Her voice firms. Who are you? No answer. He steps closer, light revealing his face. Nathaniel Crow, alive, alert, eyes carrying a quiet kind of panic. He whispers, you shouldn't have come here. Ilara steadies herself. Then why leave this for me? Crow looks at the folder in her hands. I didn't leave it for you, he says. Ilara frowns. Then who? He cuts her off with a whisper so fragile, you have to lean in to hear it. I left it for myself. To prove that, I tried. And this moment underneath the Meridian complex is where the story fractures, because the man who is supposed to guard the system is now warning the one woman trying to expose it. And the file she came to understand is the file that will now put both of them in danger. The camera pulls back, lights flicker, Crow steps closer to Ilara, and the narrator whispers, the night files never lie, but they always come with a cost. There's a part of the Meridian complex no map shows, no guidebook, no badge, no app can take you there. A hallway beyond hallways, a floor beyond floors, where shadows stretch like living things. And in that shadow, she waits. Or rather, someone waits. Ilara Omari senses it before she sees it. A flicker in the corner of her vision, like a camera's ghost, a movement too precise to be accidental, a presence that doesn't belong. You've felt it before, haven't you? That small, sinking certainty that you're being observed, that someone in the room isn't there to meet you, they're there to study you. The lights are low, faint hum of air conditioning, footsteps echo. A door clicks in the distance, then silence. Ilara keeps walking, folder clutched in her hands, eyes scanning the glass doors of offices that hold secrets she hasn't even been allowed to name yet. And then she sees it, a faint reflection in the tinted glass, nothing more than a blur. Yet the blur moves in perfect synchrony with her steps. A pulse quickens in her chest. The hairs on her arms rise. She stops, freezes, listens. Nothing, but she knows. Someone is behind the glass. Someone she can't confront because they are protected by the structure of the building itself, protected by authority, protected by invisibility. In the Meridian complex, certain people can observe without being seen. They move behind layers of authority, behind camera feeds, behind access codes. Sometimes the most powerful observers are the ones you never notice. A shadow separates from the darker corner of the office, tall, still. Its presence is almost ceremonial, watching, waiting. Ilara tightens her grip on the folder. Her mind races. Who could have access like this? Who could walk through layers of protocol and leave no trace? The answer strikes her like a hammer. Someone from the inner circle, someone with authority and no accountability. Her voice is measured but firm. I know you're there. Step forward. No movement, only the hum of the ventilation, only the reflection that shifts ever so slightly, as if the glass itself is breathing. Ilara feels the weight of being hunted, not physically, but mentally. The tension presses against her skull. Every sense on alert. You've been here before, in a smaller way. That moment when you realize the room you trusted doesn't belong to you anymore. That moment when observation is no longer neutral. That moment when you are the subject. And every choice, every blink, every breath is cataloged. She doesn't panic. She doesn't turn. She calculates. She adapts. She continues to walk. And in that adaptation, she becomes dangerous because she knows observation can be used against her, but she also knows that observation can be exploited. Her phone vibrates. A text, unknown number, short, sharp. Stop walking, start listening. Ilara freezes, her pulse drums. The hallway stretches longer. She glances at the tinted glass. The shadow behind it doesn't move, but she feels it in her chest, in her mind, in her spine. The message is clear. Someone is controlling the flow of information, controlling her movement, controlling her awareness. And the person behind the glass, they've already anticipated her response. And this is the point where reality fractures, where what you see is only half of the truth, where the human mind begins to invent danger, only to discover that every fear is grounded, every suspicion accurate. Ilara knows she is being manipulated. She knows she is being observed, and she also knows she cannot confront the observer, because to confront them is to reveal herself, and revealing herself could be fatal. The shadow behind the glass is a metaphor made flesh, authority without accountability, control without transparency, the perfect predator. Watching without blinking, Ilara slows her steps, moves toward a side office. Every movement calculated, deliberate. Every motion designed to test the observer. She stops just short of the door. She places the folder down, silently on the ledge. She steps back, and then she whispers, "I see you." The shadow pauses, holds, then recedes. Just enough to let her continue. Just enough to let the tension linger. She has survived the first encounter, but the game is only beginning. And the observer, they know she knows. And that changes everything. You've felt this before. That moment when your instincts scream louder than your eyes can confirm. That quiet understanding that the game is bigger than you imagined, that the world behind glass is watching and waiting. Ilara Omari steps forward, folder in hand, pulse steady. The shadow behind the glass does not move. But it has already set the next stage in motion, and the real story has only just begun. In the Meridian complex, silence is not the absence of sound. It is a language, a code, a signal. And on this morning, Ilara Omari began to understand that silence is far more dangerous than noise. She sits at her desk, the folder labeled 7H42 open before her. Pages spread out like a map of invisible threats. Every name, every timestamp, every corridor access log, each one a node in a network she didn't know existed. But the folder doesn't just contain data. It contains intention, the fingerprints of people who move without leaving a trace. And someone is sending her a signal. Her email pings, no subject, no sender, just a string of numbers, 10:42 PM 7 H42, a timestamp, the exact time of the secret meeting. Her eyes widen, her pulse quickens. This isn't a coincidence. This is deliberate. A marker left for her to follow. She feels it in her chest, the first flicker of understanding. Someone wants her to see this. Someone wants her to understand, but only enough to know danger exists, not its full scope. Ilara picks up her phone, her hands steady, but her mind races. She knows the pattern. Warnings arrive first, threats arrive second, and by the time you recognize the chain, it's too late. The Meridian complex hums around her, the elevators, the air vents, the distant footsteps in the marble corridors. Each one carries information. Each one could betray her. Her instincts tell her to move. Her strategy tells her to stay. She chooses neither. She waits, observes, deciphers. Because in a building like this, patience is survival. When a silent signal appears, it's never random. Someone is always trying to shape perception. They want the person watching to make a move, to react to the narrative, not the reality. And in this case, the signal was crafted to force Ilara's hand, to pull her into a path she didn't choose, to make her visible before she was ready. Another ping, another line of text. She knows too much. Control the flow. Ilara stares at it. Her stomach tightens. She knows who it's from. She doesn't know why. But the intent is unmistakable. Someone is coordinating behind her back. Someone is shaping the storm before it even begins. And the complexity terrifies her more than any direct threat ever could. She flips back through the folder. Every name, every log, every corridor timestamp now forms a pattern. But there's one detail everyone else missed: Nathaniel Crow's presence. Crow's fingerprints are everywhere, but nowhere officially logged. He is both invisible and central, a ghost and a witness, a guardian and a threat. Ilara realizes the paradox. Crow could be the only person able to save her, or the only one who could destroy her entirely. And she knows she cannot ask anyone, not Train, not Hale, not Rusk, not even the staffers she trusts most, because everyone is part of the machine. And the machine is already moving. She closes the folder, places it carefully in her bag. Her pulse slows, her breathing becomes deliberate. Ilara walks toward the elevator, steps measured, eyes scanning reflections in the tinted glass. Every hallway, every shadow, every flicker of light now carries potential information. She moves like someone who knows the building is alive. The Meridian complex is not just bricks and marble. It is surveillance. It is architecture as observation. It is walls that remember, and she is being watched. Her phone buzzes again. A new message. The observer is closer than you think. Look for the reflection. She freezes, looks around. Her reflection stares back from a dark glass pane. For a split second, she sees movement behind it. A figure. Not identifiable, not yet, but waiting for her reaction. She feels the adrenaline surge, not fear, focus. The silent signal has been delivered. The game has officially begun. And in the shadows behind the glass, someone smiles, because they know she has already read the first page. You've asked this question too. How do you fight what you cannot see? Ilara Omari is about to learn the answer, but the truth she uncovers will cost more than she imagines. And the story has only just started to whisper. In the Meridian complex, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no missteps. Every movement, every glance, every shadow is a potential message. And when you enter the orbit of someone like Marcus Train, you don't just play the game, you navigate the labyrinth he designed decades ago. Ilara Omari is about to discover that labyrinth firsthand. Ilara sits in her office, the folder 7H42 open once again, papers splayed like a blueprint of invisible forces. Her eyes scan, methodically tracking the intersections of names, timestamps, and corridor access logs. It is not just a file, it is a map, a tactical loop designed to push, pull, and redirect. And she is right in the center. Her instincts tell her this is deliberate. The timing, the signals, the placement of every piece. Someone is orchestrating her reactions. Someone is controlling her awareness. And she needs to turn it around. When someone like Train sets a tactical loop, it's not about direct confrontation. It's about anticipation. He wants the other person to make choices within a system he has already defined. And if they fail, the failure feels like their own. Now, short, sharp, no pleasantries, no hesitation. The line goes silent. Then a whisper. He's in sublevel K. He's busy, a euphemism for danger, for secrets, for someone caught between hiding and revealing. Ilara exhales slowly. She closes her eyes, then opens them again. She notices the inconsistencies others overlooked. Corridor clearances out of sequence, unauthorized access to secure terminals, timestamp discrepancies aligned with unusual internal communications. It's a loop, a cycle, a chain of events designed to provoke action, to reveal her weaknesses, to measure her responses, and somewhere in the system, someone is watching, analyzing, predicting her next move. Crow appears suddenly, in the doorway of the sub-level office, his face pale, sweat beading. He steps closer. "You weren't supposed to see that," he says. Not accusing, not warning, just stating fact. "I didn't leave it for you to find." Ilara looks him in the eye. "Then why is it here?" Crow hesitates, then whispers, "'Cause I had no choice." In a tactical loop, the observer often forces multiple actors into a convergence. Crow wasn't supposed to interact with Omari. He was supposed to be invisible. The fact that he appeared means someone wants a reaction, someone wants chaos, and someone has planned for it. Ilara sits back, fingers tapping, breath slow, her mind racing through probabilities. She sees it now. The next step of the loop, the moment where the system expects her to falter, the exact place where she could make a mistake. And she decides she will not follow the loop, she will bend it, she will redefine it. Her first move is subtle, an internal misdirection, a fake path, a test of the observer, because in the Meridian complex, the first person to understand the loop controls the outcome. Lights flicker, the hum of the air vents grows louder, footsteps echo outside her office, a door clicks, a file slides across a desk in the hallway. Everything is a signal, every sound a message, every shadow a warning, and she feels it, the pulse of the building, the rhythm of the game, the heartbeat of those orchestrating the storm. You felt this too, the moment when the environment is alive, and you are part of its pattern without knowing it, when every choice is being measured, every action analyzed, every breath recorded. Ilara Omari now understands something fundamental. To survive this loop, she cannot fight the system. She must become the system. And when you do that, the game changes. The loop is no longer her cage. It is her weapon. And the first strike is about to begin. In the Meridian complex, action is never allowed. It begins with small shifts, a glance, a step, a keystroke that no one notices. Ilara Omari has decided the loop that was meant to trap her will now serve her. She will strike first. Ilara walks through the atrium, folder in hand, eyes scanning every reflection, every shadow, every tinted glass pane. She stops at the security checkpoint, badge scans, access granted. The building breathes around her. The elevators hum. Footsteps echo. Whispers hide behind closed doors. Everything is normal. Everything is a mask. Everything is a signal she must decode. And she begins. Her target is not Train, not Hale, not Rusk. Her first strike is subtle, invisible to anyone not watching the full map. A misdirect sent through internal communications. A fabricated note about a scheduling conflict. A meeting rescheduled. A hallway cleared. All perfectly timed to test the reactions of those orchestrating the loop. She presses send, steps back, and waits. From behind tinted glass, a figure shifts. The shadow she noticed days before, their reflection ripples. The pulse of the building quickens. The loop begins to bend. Responses come faster than anticipated. Conflicting reports, unexpected movement, whispers of confusion. She watches it unfold, her pulse steady, her eyes sharp. The first strike lands, and she hasn't even revealed herself yet. The first strike in a controlled loop is always psychological. It's not about damage, it's about perception. The person initiating the strike needs to see how the system reacts, how the observers adapt. It tells you everything you need to know about the next move. Back in sublevel K, Crow notices anomalies, logs are shifting, foot traffic deviates, communications spike in patterns that make no sense, except to someone playing the loop from inside. Crow realizes Omari isn't following the script. She's bending it. She's turning the trap into her advantage. And that realization terrifies him. She steps into a hallway, folder tucked under her arm, mind running multiple scenarios. Scenario 1. Observers realize she's manipulating the loop. Scenario 2. They attempt to counter her, revealing their methods. Scenario 3. She creates a feedback loop, forcing an error from them, each step measured, each movement deliberate. She is now playing 3 moves ahead in a game designed to stop her at move 1. The air hums, lights flicker, footsteps echo in marble corridors. A door clicks shut somewhere above. Every sound is data. Every shadow is a warning. Every reflection is a potential observer. And she moves through it all, like someone who has become part of the architecture. You felt this too, the moment when you manipulate a system designed to manipulate you, when the predator becomes prey, when the invisible hand guiding the chaos suddenly has to adapt. Ilara Omari's first strike is complete, not a confrontation, not a declaration, not even visible, but it has landed, and the consequences are immediate. Reports begin to circulate, unexpected movements in office logs, confused whispers among staffers, emails flagged, hallways cleared. Someone in the building knows something has shifted, someone above her, someone watching from behind glass. It's about anticipation. He wants the other person to make choices within a system he has already defined, and if they fail, the failure feels like their own. Now, short, sharp, and for the first time, they realize the loop is no longer theirs. The first strike doesn't destroy the system, it exposes it. And once a system is exposed, it can never be unseen. Ilara Omari has just opened the first fracture. In the Meridian complex, nothing moves without consequence. Not a footstep, not a keystroke, not a whisper behind a glass pane. And after Ilara Omari's first strike, everything began to fracture. By mid-morning, the building had changed. Subtle shifts, repositioned staff, emails delayed, corridors cleared as if someone had rearranged the rules of reality. It was invisible to anyone not paying attention, but Ilara could feel it. The pulse of the system had altered. The observers, once steady, controlled, omniscient, were reacting, scrambling, exposed. And for the first time, she realized the trap she had walked into was now collapsing around them. In a complex system like this, the smallest disruption can cascade. Ilara's first strike didn't just redirect attention, it revealed the hidden connections, the dependencies, the silent hierarchies. And once those are visible, the whole structure becomes vulnerable. From behind tinted glass, the shadow she had sensed earlier shifts again. The observer's breathing tightens. They realize the pattern has changed. Their loop is broken. And in the Meridian complex, a broken loop is dangerous. Ilara walks the hallways with purpose, each step precise, each glance calculated. She is no longer just reacting, she is defining the game. She stops at the edge of the atrium. Her reflection catches in the glass. For a brief moment, she sees herself not as a player, but as the pivot, the axis around which the system must now rotate. She exhales slowly and moves forward. Crow watches the anomalies grow. He studies the logs, tracking every deviation. His face tightens. He mutters to himself, "They're bending it. They're forcing me to see it." And that realization changes everything. He is no longer the guardian of the system. He is now a participant in its unraveling. Lights flicker overhead. Footsteps echo. A door clicks somewhere far above. The hum of the ventilation carries the weight of observation. Everything conspires to remind her the building is alive. It knows her moves. And now it's responding. In the chaos, she notices staffers whispering. They sense the shift, even if they can't articulate it. Fear, uncertainty, curiosity, small decisions ripple outward. Every action creates a response. And in this environment, a single decision can change the trajectory of a career or a life. Ilara understands this better than anyone. She also knows the observers are watching her reactions, waiting for hesitation, waiting for error, and she refuses to give them either. When you disrupt a system like this, you create a fracture, and a fracture exposes everything: loyalty, fear, ambition, corruption. The true power is in understanding how others react to the fracture. You've felt this before. The moment when the ground shifts beneath your feet and the people around you begin to reveal themselves, the moment when a small, precise action can rewrite the balance of power without anyone firing a shot. Ilara Omari has created that moment. She has fractured the meridian complex, and the ripple is spreading faster than anyone realizes. The first strike was just the beginning. The fracture is only widening. And once the system begins to crack, everything hidden will eventually come to light. The meridian complex is more than marble, glass, and steel. It is a network, a body, and the eyes in its ceilings are always watching. Ilara Omari has fractured the system, but the system is far from defeated. Every movement she makes, every step she takes, is cataloged, processed, analyzed, and somewhere, someone or something is recording it all. You've felt it before. The sensation that every corridor, every reflection, every flicker of light is not just architecture, but observation. And now she feels it with perfect clarity. Surveillance cameras, motion sensors, biometric readers, all connected to a central hub, all feeding a single observer. A figure she has not yet seen, one who has remained in the shadows, is watching the fracture unfold in real time. They know her tactics, they anticipate her calculations, and they adjust. The loop she bent is being countered with data, precision, and patience. In a building like this, observation isn't passive, it's active. Every reflection, every shadow, every detail can be manipulated. When someone like Ilara interferes with the system, the observer responds immediately. They become part of the environment, invisible, yet omnipresent. She moves through the hallways with caution, noticing subtle changes. A door that used to remain closed now stands slightly ajar. A reflection in tinted glass shifts unexpectedly. The hum of the ventilation carries patterns in the airflow, minor adjustments, but meaningful. She stops mid-step, realizing the observer is not just watching her, they are communicating. Through silence, through shadows, through environmental cues only a careful mind would notice. A beam of light catches a metallic surface, a reflection shifts. She sees it as a pattern, almost imperceptible. A message: you're being followed, not written, not digital. A pattern only discernible to someone attuned. Ilara exhales, her pulse steadies. She understands the implications. Every move she makes now is visible. Every reaction can be predicted. Every decision has consequences far beyond the room she stands in. She is simultaneously empowered and vulnerable. The fracture she created gives her agency, but the observation network neutralizes some of that power. The very building she bent to her will has begun to bend her back. And this is the paradox of Meridian. To see the system, you must move within it, but the system sees you too. Pro appears again, eyes tight with tension. Ilara, they're not just watching, they're learning. Every move, every hesitation, every calculation. If you misstep, it won't just be your file, it will be you. Ilara nods. Then we adapt faster than they can predict. And she knows she must, because in the Meridian complex, survival is calculated in milliseconds. Footsteps echo through empty corridors. The ventilation hums like a nervous heartbeat. Lights flicker and realign. Doors click. Reflections shift. The building itself feels alive, aware, and anticipatory. And in that living structure, she is both predator and prey. You've sensed this too. The moment when every corner, every shadow, every reflection feels intentional. The realization that someone or something is always observing. That the space you move through is not neutral, but a weapon. Ilara Omari now understands the full scope of the game. The eyes in the ceiling are not passive, they are active participants. and she must navigate them carefully, or they will navigate her. The fracture has widened, the eyes in the ceiling have awakened, and the next move will decide who controls the light and who remains in shadow. In the meridian complex, silence has a voice. A whisper can travel farther than a shout. And today, Ilara Omari discovers just how loud a whisper can be. It begins in corridors no one uses, stairwells coated in dust, break rooms lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs, where messages move faster than memos, faster than emails, faster than anyone in authority expects. The Whisper Network is alive. It has its own pulse, its own rules, and it knows her name. Staffers avoid her glance. They hesitate in hallways. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Phones vibrate, but screens remain blank. She notices patterns she didn't expect. Cryptic post-it notes on walls, pens placed strategically on desks, doors left ajar then closed before she approaches. The Meridian Complex isn't just observing her anymore, it's communicating, and she must listen. You don't realize how much information travels in whispers. It's not in files, not in emails. It's in what's not said, the silent cues, the subtle gestures, the shadows shifting. That's where the real intelligence lives. She walks the hallways slowly, folder 7H42 tucked under her arm, eyes scanning, ears alert. A post-it note on a copier reads, "They're watching the fracture. Move carefully." A pen positioned on a desk forms a line toward the stairwell. A small gesture, but meaningful. She follows the cues, through sub-level corridors, past security checkpoints, down stairwells where no one usually goes. Each movement confirms it. The Whisper Network knows more than the official channels. It is alive. And it is loyal to someone. Crow steps from the shadows. Ilara, you're not alone. The whispers, they've always been there, but they never reach the surface unless someone awakens them. Awaken them? She asks. Crow nods. The system controls the visible. The whispers control the invisible. And if you want to survive this, you must navigate both. Ilara realizes she can use the whispers to her advantage. Signals once meant to intimidate her can now serve as guidance. Patterns previously invisible now reveal safe paths through the maze. She begins to move deliberately, following the silent signs, testing responses, creating feedback loops, every step a calculated risk. Because in the Meridian Complex, control is not just about power, it's about knowledge. And the Whisper Network holds knowledge the eyes in the ceiling cannot see. Lights hum, fluorescent flickers sync with distant footsteps. Doors click shut softly. Paper rustles on desks. Every sound is a signal. Every shadow is a guide. She begins to trust the network, to understand its rhythm, to let it lead her through unseen corridors toward the next fracture point in the system. You've experienced this too. The moment when you realize that the world is communicating with you through subtleties you almost ignore, when the invisible lines of connection become your lifeline. Ilara Omari now moves within two layers, the observed and the whisper. The fracture she created has opened a space for both, and in that space she becomes unpredictable. The system watches, the whispers guide, and for the first time Ilara understands, to control the light, you must first listen to the shadows. In the Meridian Complex, power has a shape you can't touch. A hand moves through the corridors, unseen, guiding, steering, manipulating. And today, Ilara Omari begins to see it. Not through files, not through cameras, not through emails, but through the consequences of choices she didn't make. Every rearranged schedule, every closed door, every redirected glance, all controlled by something or someone she can barely name. The hidden hand is real, and it's reaching for her. Ilara studies the logs. Folder 7H42 sits open on her desk. Every access point, every timestamp, every anomaly converges. And suddenly, a name emerges. Not Train, not Hale, not Rusk. Someone she didn't suspect. someone who had been invisible in plain sight. The hidden hand has a face. Nathaniel Crow. Crow appears in the dimly lit stairwell. I wasn't supposed to interfere, he says, voice low, but someone had to guide the fracture. Someone had to make sure it didn't collapse entirely. Ilara narrows her eyes. You're the hidden hand? He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestures to the logs. All these anomalies, these subtle shifts, I orchestrated them to give you space to test the system. You think you're striking first, but you've been walking along the path I created. Her pulse quickens. The revelation hits. The fracture wasn't entirely hers. The network, the observer, the whispers, all partially curated by someone she had overlooked. The hidden hand is always someone who operates in the gray. Not above the law, not entirely outside of it, but capable of steering the system without leaving fingerprints. When they act, it looks like chance, but it's never chance. Ilara's mind races. If Crow is the hidden hand, he could either protect her or control her. Every decision now carries dual meaning. A movement could be her survival or her undoing. She must navigate the fracture while negotiating with his creator, the very person who allowed the fracture to exist in the first place. And in this realization lies the next layer of tension. Trust is a weapon, and betrayal can be invisible. From behind the tinted glass, the shadow shifts. Not aggressive, calculating, adjusting. The hidden hand has forced the observer to react. Every prediction now falters. Every loop begins to bend under new rules. The system is destabilized. Not destroyed, but destabilized. And the consequences are exponential. Footsteps echo softly in the hallways. Lights flicker in a deliberate rhythm. A distant door clicks, somewhere above. Paper rustles as staffers rearrange without explanation. The meridian complex pulses like a living organism. Its heart beats in patterns Ilara is beginning to understand. And with Crow beside her, she can anticipate the system's next moves. You've felt this before. The moment when the game you thought you controlled is revealed to have been orchestrated all along. When the hand guiding the fracture is not visible until the consequences become unavoidable. Ilara Omari now knows the hidden hand exists. And with that knowledge comes both power and risk. The fracture is widening. The hand is revealed. And the question now becomes, does she follow the path or redraw it entirely? Ilara Omari stands at the edge of the fracture. The meridian complex sprawls around her, corridors twisting like veins, lights flickering like a heartbeat, shadows moving with purpose, Crow beside her, the hidden hand revealed. And the observer, still unseen, still calculating, she realizes now, the path she thought she was following was never hers. It must be redrawn. She spreads folder 7, H42, across the table. Her finger traces the anomalies, the shifted timestamps, the corridor access logs. Every path the system expects her to take has already been predicted. She needs a new route, one no one has anticipated, one that bends the fracture further, and she decides the redraw begins now. Crow watches her movements, tension etched into his face. You're changing everything, he says softly. You're destabilizing more than the observer. You're destabilizing the hidden hand too. Ilara meets his eyes. I'm not destabilizing anyone. I'm creating options. He exhales. Options in a system like this can be deadly. Every choice has consequences. She nods, and she understands. Ilara begins subtle manipulations, misdirected emails, adjusted meeting schedules, rearranged security logs. Each move carefully crafted. Each move designed to test reactions, to bend expectations, to create openings. And with each action, the system falters. Observers hesitate. Whisper networks shift. Corridors clear themselves for no apparent reason. The path is no longer straight. It twists. It folds. It becomes unpredictable. But the redraw is not without risk. Every action she takes can affect staffers, colleagues, innocents. She pauses, weighs outcomes, considers the human cost. Power without responsibility can destroy more than the system. It can destroy people. And she decides the path will be strategic, but it will also be humane. Lights hum. The hum resonates in the walls. Footsteps echo down corridors that now seem unfamiliar. A door clicks somewhere distant. A reflection shimmers across a darkened window. Every sound is part of the system. Every movement is a signal. And every choice Ilara makes ripples outward through both visible and invisible channels. Redrawing the path in a controlled system is risky. You force the players to improvise. You expose the hidden hand. You challenge observers to respond in real time. And in doing so, you become the unpredictable element, the one no one has planned for. Behind tinted glass, the shadow shifts, calculating, adjusting. Every pattern she creates, every misdirection she deploys, forces the observer to adapt. The system is still alive, still powerful, but now uncertain. And uncertainty in a system built on predictability is dangerous. You felt this too. The moment when you realize the path you are on is no longer valid. When the rules shift under your feet, and the only way forward is to create your own way. Ilara Omari now redraws her path, and in doing so, she's become the variable the system cannot control. The fracture widens. The path bends. And in the Meridian complex, unpredictability is power. In the Meridian complex, every action has a reaction. Every ripple encounters a wave. And when Ilara Omari redrew the path, she activated something she hadn't fully anticipated. The shadow countermove. The observer, once passive, is now responsive. Every reflection in tinted glass, every flicker of light, every subtle shift in the whisper network becomes a calculated reply. The fracture she widened is no longer just hers. It has opponents. Footsteps echo differently now. Corridors she cleared yesterday are suddenly populated. Doors that should have remained ajar are slammed shut as if by invisible hands. Emails ping, untraceable in origin. Phone lines click. The whisper network carries distorted instructions, misleading cues meant to test her trust in every subtle sign. She senses it immediately. The shadow countermove is deliberate, crafted to force error. And failure here is not theoretical, it is immediate. Crow catches up to her in a stairwell, voice low, urgent. They're countering you. Every step, every misdirection, they anticipate. And they've adapted faster than we expected. Ilara nods slowly. She feels the tension like a physical weight. She knows the observers are now actively shaping the environment. Every reflection, every whisper, every flicker of light is part of their reply. And she must respond. She moves carefully. Every hallway, every corner, every reflection now has meaning. She implements countermeasures, fabricated signals within the whisper network, controlled misdirections in corridor access, subtle manipulations of the observer's expected patterns. The game now plays on two levels, visible and invisible. The fracture is a battlefield, and she is no longer a simple participant. She is the pivot. Lights flicker. Footsteps echo with dissonance. A door slams, seemingly of its own accord. Paper rustles in empty offices. Whispers carry false instructions to the unsuspecting. Every detail is amplified. Every subtlety is a weapon. And every moment demands absolute focus. She pauses mid-step, considers the collateral of the countermove. Every misdirection, every manipulation, every test of the observer could create confusion, fear, or harm to staffers unaware of the game. She breathes, slowly, methodically, and decides efficiency must never trump humanity. She will fight shadows, but she will protect the innocent. In a controlled environment, the first countermove reveals more than strategy. It exposes character. Who will adapt without harming others? Who will exploit chaos without crossing moral lines? And those choices, they define the leader in the system. From behind tinted glass, the shadow hesitates. Every subtle misdirection she deploys Forces recalculation. The predictable loops are now chaotic. The fracture spreads, the system wavers, and the shadow, once confident, feels the imbalance. You've felt this too. The moment when your opponent adapts to your move, and you realize the game is now co-created. When strategy becomes a dance between observation, deception, and ethical choice, Ilara Omari is no longer just bending the system, she is shaping it. Even as it shapes her in return, the shadow moves. She counters. The fracture grows. And in the Meridian Complex, the game has only just begun. The Meridian Complex hums with unseen energy. Footsteps echo like warning signals. Lights flicker, not from electricity, but from the tension charged into every hallway, every corridor, every hidden corner. Ilara Omari moves through it with purpose. The fracture she created has widened. The hidden hand, the shadow observer, the whisper network, all forces now converge. And she stands at the center. You felt it before. The moment when multiple currents collide, and everything you thought was separate becomes entangled. This is the convergence. It begins subtly. Emails arrive in overlapping sequences. Security logs contradict themselves. Staffers' whispers double back on themselves, carrying conflicting instructions. Every signal she once trusted now demands scrutiny. Every reflection becomes a potential trap. Every shadow may carry intention. And in the center of this chaos, she notices the pattern. This convergence is deliberate. It is designed to force clarity or force error. Crow finds her near the central atrium, his face pale under fluorescent flickers. They're forcing a meeting point. Everything is moving toward it. The observers, the hidden hand, even the fractures themselves. If you misstep here, the system will collapse on you. Ilara nods slowly. When? This is why we redraw paths, she says, to anticipate convergence before it defines us. Ilara begins to map the convergence. Every anomaly tracked, every whisper decoded, every shadow interpreted. She calculates the optimal moment to act, the exact point where she can influence the system, and the moment where her strike will have maximum impact. The fracture is not just widened, it is a fulcrum, a lever she can pull. The atrium lights pulse with tension. Footsteps echo from multiple levels. Glass reflects movement from unexpected angles. Paper rustles on desks, as if carried by invisible hands. And in this orchestrated chaos, Ilara feels the rhythm. She steps in sync with it. Breath steady, mind sharp, heart focused. Staffers begin to feel the shift. Some panic, some pause in curiosity, some unknowingly assist in the orchestration. Ilara understands the system is more than observation. It is a collection of humans whose choices ripple through the architecture, and she can leverage that, not by force, but by perception, influence, and timing. When multiple forces converge, the operator who understands the connections first controls the outcome. The observers, the hidden hands, the environment, they all react. But the person who predicts the convergence, who moves in anticipation, becomes untouchable. Not by power, but by insight. From behind tinted glass, the shadow hesitates. Loops and patterns they relied on are now fracturing. Each new adjustment by Ilara creates uncertainty. Every predictable response fails. The system, so long thought perfect, begins to bend under the weight of human calculation. You felt this too. The moment when currents collide, when forces you can neither fully see nor touch force you to confront the center of the storm. Ilara Omari now occupies that center. Every eye in the complex, every whisper, every reflection, all converge toward her. And the choice she makes next will define not just the fracture, but the future of the system itself. The convergence is complete. The fracture is at its apex. And in the Meridian Complex, the first true test of control begins now. In the Meridian Complex, every second is amplified. Footsteps echo louder than they should. Lights flicker with deliberate rhythm. Even the hum of ventilation seems to carry a message. Ilara Omari stands at the center of the convergence. The fracture she created. The hidden hand revealed. The observer watching, calculating, adapting. Everything waits. Everything holds its breath. And the critical moment is here. Her eyes scan the atrium, every shadow, every reflection, every whispering corridor. Then, subtle, a misplaced folder slides across the floor. A pen rolls across a desk in a straight line. The whisper network sends a misdirection. Move carefully. They are ready. Her pulse accelerates. This is it. Crow appears beside her. Ilara, this is the point where the system tests resolve. It doesn't matter what you know or what you've predicted. It matters what you do. She nods, and she knows hesitation will be fatal. Every choice now carries weight not just for her, but for everyone in the complex. Ilara moves deliberately, every step calculated, every glance precise. She manipulates the fractures. A security loop triggers a false clearance. Observers are drawn to one corridor. Whispers guide staff to misaligned positions. Every misdirection perfect. Every reaction anticipated. The critical moment is not about confrontation. It is about orchestration. And she is now conducting the entire system like a symphony. The lights flicker, footsteps echo, doors click shut, paper rustles on desks. The atrium vibrates with tension. Every shadow carries meaning. Every reflection signals change. And through it all, Ilara feels the pulse of the complex. She is no longer just a participant. She is the center of its rhythm. Staffers feel unease. Whispers spread uncertainty. Some freeze. Some act instinctively. Ilara calculates the impact of every action, balancing chaos with subtle guidance. She cannot eliminate risk, but she can shape it. Every life, every choice, every minor ripple is accounted for in the strategy. The critical moment is when knowledge meets action. It's not enough to anticipate. You must commit. The system will resist. The observer will counter. And the margin for error is minimal. Those who act decisively, who orchestrate rather than react, they define the outcome. Behind tinted glass, the shadow hesitates. The loops they relied on fail to control the chaos. Predictable responses crumble. The fracture widens, and the critical moment reveals them. They are no longer the master, they are reacting. You felt this too. The moment when the weight of consequence presses down, when anticipation and action collide, when hesitation can no longer be tolerated. Ilara Omari stands in that space. Every force converges on her, every reflection, every whisper, every shadow, all waiting for the choice that will define everything. And she acts. The critical moment has arrived. The fracture reaches its apex. And in the Meridian Complex, nothing will ever be the same. The Meridian Complex holds its breath. Everything stands on a knife's edge. Ilara Omari's action, the critical moment, has landed. And now, the first cascade begins. A single misaligned log triggers a chain reaction. Hallways clear unexpectedly. Security protocols override themselves. Whispers amplify across the network, confusing observers and staff alike. Crow watches from the shadows. They're reacting faster than anticipated, he murmurs. Every adjustment you've made, it's spreading through the system. It isn't chaos. Not yet. It's a controlled cascade. A fracture evolving into a wave. Behind tinted glass, the shadow falters. Loops collapse under pressure. Predictable patterns shatter. Every calculated move is now a variable beyond their control. The observer's confidence slips, and for the first time, they hesitate. In the Meridian Complex, hesitation is contagious. She walks deliberately through corridors, the echo of her steps blending with the growing ripple. Doors open for her, then close behind. Emails she hasn't sent arrive mysteriously. Staffers move instinctively, guided by whispers she subtly amplified. The fracture becomes her ally. Every minor adjustment accelerates the cascade. The system designed to trap her now bends in her favor. The hum of lights grows louder. Footsteps echo in rhythm with her heartbeat. Paper rustles with ghostly precision. Doors click in synchrony. Every detail a reflection, a whisper, a flicker of light. carries meaning, carries weight, and every pulse reinforces her control. Staffers feel the shift but cannot articulate it. Panic mixes with instinct. Some act to correct the chaos, only to fall further into the cascade. Some follow the misdirected whispers, playing unwittingly into her strategy. Ilara watches with calm intensity. Every ripple measured, every reaction noted, every possibility accounted for. When the first cascade begins, the operator who controls the initial fracture holds tremendous influence. The observer reacts, but the ripple spreads faster than any one person can contain. And in those initial moments, the system's vulnerabilities reveal themselves in stark relief. Crow steps closer, voice urgent. Ilara, this is only the beginning. The first cascade exposes weak points, but also dangers. The system may bend, but it can also snap. Be ready for the counter cascade. She nods. Her eyes scan the atrium, mapping possibilities, contingencies, and exits. She is prepared. You felt this too. The moment when one decision sets off a chain reaction you can neither fully control nor fully predict. The initial fracture spreads, amplifying both opportunity and risk. Ilara Omari has triggered the first cascade. The system trembles. The observers falter. The fracture widens. And nothing will ever be the same again. The first cascade flows. The hidden hand watches. The shadow hesitates. And in the meridian complex, power is no longer in prediction, it is in execution. The meridian complex has a memory. Every misstep, every fracture, every ripple is logged. And when the first cascade spreads, the system begins its response, the counter cascade. Lights flicker, but this time with precision. Corridors shift subtly, doors closing behind her faster. Sensors activate in unexpected sequences. Staffers react to invisible cues. Her misdirections partially undone. The observer is no longer passive. Loops are recalculated. Predictable patterns reassert themselves. But not perfectly. Ilara Omari feels it immediately. The system is learning. The hidden hand is adapting. And the shadow is striking back. Crow stands nearby, tense. They're responding to your first cascade. Every misdirection is being counted. They're forcing you into a new loop. You can't just react. You have to anticipate the anticipation. Ilara nods, pulse steady. She understands the counter cascade is not a threat, it's a mirror, and she will use it. Ilara walks deliberately through the atrium. She manipulates the ripple. Whisper network signals are subtly reversed. False corridors appear in logs. Security loops are fed fabricated anomalies. Every step calculated, every shadow considered, every reflection interpreted. The counter cascade is powerful but predictable in its reaction, and she bends it to her advantage. The hum of ventilation shifts in rhythm. Footsteps echo unevenly. A paper stack falls in the corner. Lights pulse in near-synchronous staccato. Every detail, sound, shadow, reflection carries meaning. Every cue is weaponized. Every sensory thread becomes a signal, and Ilara weaves them all into a new strategy. Staffers react, uncertain but instinctive. Some unwittingly reinforce her misdirections. Some attempt corrections, only to fall into orchestrated traps. Ilara observes, patient. No one is collateral. Every person is a participant in the unfolding cascade, and her strategy is as much psychological as operational. The counter cascade reveals character. It tests judgment under pressure. The observer, the system, even the hidden hand, they react. But it is the operator who adapts decisively, who sees the mirrored chaos and turns it into advantage, who ultimately controls the flow. The shadow behind tinted glass falters, loops break, patterns fail. The system is responding but not dominating. The counter cascade is no longer fully under control, and the observer realizes the fracture was not just a disruption, it is an evolution. You felt this too. The moment when the world reacts to your actions, and you must respond to the response. The initial ripple becomes mirrored. The first cascade becomes a test. Ilara Omari now faces the counter cascade, and she has already learned the truth. Power in the meridian complex is not about controlling the system. It is about becoming the unpredictable element within it. The counter cascade surges. The fracture spreads further. And in the meridian complex, every reaction becomes part of the game, and every move defines the rules. The meridian complex has a threshold, a moment where observation, calculation, and anticipation collide, and Ilara Omari is about to find it. The fracture has spread. The first cascade executed. The counter cascade in motion. Everything converges on a single point, the breakpoint. Lights flicker in rapid succession. Footsteps echo unpredictably. Reflections split across tinted glass. Staffers hesitate, instinctively sensing change. The system is near its limit. Loops fail. Patterns crumble. The observer shifts constantly, but cannot stabilize. Ilara feels it in her chest. The weight of decisions, of ripples, of human and machine responses. The breakpoint is here. Crow steps close, voice tense. Ilara, the system is at its tipping point. Any misstep could cascade into irreversible failure. This is the moment where control and chaos collide, and you decide which side prevails. She nods slowly. The gravity of the moment presses down. Every corridor, every whisper, every shadow now matters. Ilara moves deliberately, disrupts expected patterns in the observer's loops, amplifies selective whispers to misdirect staffers, creates false anomalies in access logs. Each action sharpens the fracture. Each ripple accelerates toward the breakpoint. The system responds, but imperfectly. Every countermeasure is met with delayed adaptation. She is conducting the entire complex like a living orchestra. Lights pulse in irregular staccato. Footsteps echo unpredictably across marble floors. A door slams. Paper rustles in distant offices. Shadows shift across walls as if alive. Every detail carries a message. Every pulse reinforces the fracture. Every whisper builds tension, and she moves in the rhythm of the system itself. Staffers react instinctively. Some caught in loops they do not understand. Some follow cues. Some resist. Some freeze. The human component magnifies the fracture. Each minor decision amplifies the ripple. Each hesitation increases the stakes. Ilara watches with precise awareness, balancing risk, influence, and protection. She cannot control everything, but she can guide the outcome. The breakpoint is where all variables converge. It is the moment when strategy meets human unpredictability, when the system is stressed beyond its normal bounds. Those who survive the breakpoint are not the strongest, they are the most adaptable. And in that adaptation lies ultimate power. From behind tinted glass, the shadow shifts nervously. Predictable responses fail. Loops collapse. Every countermeasure misaligns. The observer is forced into improvisation. Uncertainty spreads. And the fracture the fault line Ilara initiated widens. The breakpoint is reached. You felt this too. The moment when everything you knew becomes unstable. When every reaction carries amplified consequences. When the world shifts beneath your feet. And you realize the system itself is bending. Ilara Omari stands at that edge. The breakpoint is not a place of danger. It is a crucible, and it will reveal who controls the fracture and who is consumed by it. The breakpoint is crossed, the fracture deepens, and in the meridian complex, nothing will ever return to its previous form. The meridian complex exhales. Not a literal breath, but the energy in the hallways, the atriums, the whispering corridors shifts. Ilara Omari has pushed the system past its breakpoint. And now, equilibrium is shattered. Lights pulse sporadically, irregularly, casting fractured reflections across marble and glass. Footsteps echo in dissonant patterns. Doors slam, then slowly reopen. Staffers pause mid-motion, frozen by the unpredictability of the environment. The observer behind tinted glass falters, loops collapsing under pressure, responses delayed, inaccurate, reactive. The system, once pristine, controlled, precise, is now chaotic. And Ilara, she thrives in the chaos. Crow appears beside her, voice low, tight. The equilibrium is gone. What remains is instability, but instability you can exploit. The observer is recalibrating. The hidden hand is adjusting. And the whispers they've gone rogue. Ilara nods. She feels the weight, the opportunity, and the danger of the moment. The system is alive, but its rules no longer bind her. Ilara moves through the atrium deliberately. Misaligned security loops become deliberate misdirections. Whispers now carry dual meanings, truth and deception intertwined. Shadows manipulated to create false patterns for the observer. Every ripple she produces is amplified by the chaos around her. The fracture is no longer simply a weakness in the system, it is a tool, a weapon, a stage. Lights stutter like a nervous heartbeat. Footsteps echo from multiple directions, some phantom, some real. Paper rustles with ghostly cadence. Doors click shut with deliberate randomness. Reflections fracture across walls, columns, and floors. Everything is a signal. Everything is a clue. And Ilara reads them all. Staffers are caught in the instability. Some freeze, paralyzed. Some act instinctively, unknowingly assisting in her orchestration. Some panic, attempting to regain control. Ilara observes, calculates, adapts. The human variable amplifies the fracture. Every reaction becomes a component of her strategy. Every hesitation a lever she can exploit. When equilibrium shatters, the strongest systems are tested not by force, but by adaptability. Chaos exposes opportunity. And the operator, who understands both human and systemic response, gains control over what was once uncontrollable. The shadow behind tinted glass falters. Predictable responses fail. Loops collapse entirely. Counter cascades misalign. The observer, once confident, precise, and in control, now reacts with panic. The fracture grows, uncontrolled, and the hidden hand is forced to intervene or risk collapse. You felt this too. The moment when the world you trusted fractures before your eyes, and what once seemed stable is suddenly in chaos. Ilara Omari now moves through that chaos like a conductor. She does not impose order, she interprets instability, and in doing so, she becomes the central force in a world no longer predictable. The equilibrium is gone, the fracture is total, and in the Meridian complex, the question is no longer who controls the system, but who will define what comes next. Chaos reigns in the Meridian complex, the equilibrium shattered, the fracture widening, and yet, amid the turmoil, Ilara Omari begins to see order. Not the old order, not the system's rules, but a new pattern emerging from the instability. Ilara moves with deliberate precision. The whispers she once followed, she now directs. Shadows and reflections become signals for movement. Staffers' instinctive reactions are subtly guided. Every action now builds a lattice of influence. The fracture becomes a conduit, a tool to assert control without confrontation. She is no longer reacting. She is shaping. Crow watches silently, awe in his eyes. The fracture was never the goal, he murmurs. The goal was to find the hidden pattern in chaos, and you found it. Lights pulse with irregular rhythm. Footsteps echo in counterpoint, some deliberate, some instinctive. Doors click shut and open in orchestrated cadence. Paper rustles like a wind-blown symphony. Shadows bend, stretch, and merge. Every detail becomes a signal, every sound an instruction, and every reflection a confirmation. Ilara moves through it all, like a navigator of the invisible. Staffers now follow cues, unaware of the manipulation guiding them. Some panic, some improvise, but all actions fit into her design. The human element, once a variable, becomes part of the structure she is building. Every hesitation, every instinctive movement strengthens her influence. When chaos is total, those who see the underlying pattern emerge are the true operators. Control is not about force. It is about alignment, aligning variables, reactions, and human behavior toward an invisible purpose. and that alignment is power. The shadow behind tinted glass falters. Loops no longer predict. Patterns no longer dominate. The observer now reacts to her movements. The hidden hand attempts minor interventions, but even Crow acknowledges her foresight. She has anticipated every known variable. The fracture, once dangerous, is now an instrument of influence. You felt this too. The moment when chaos becomes clarity, when disruption becomes a tool, when instability gives way to insight. Ilara Omari now occupies the center of control, not through domination, not through force, but by understanding the fracture, aligning the human element, and shaping the invisible threads of the system itself. The fracture is no longer a threat. It is a tool. The observer reacts, the hidden hand adjusts, and in the meridian complex, control has a new face, and her name is Ilara Omari. The meridian complex exhales one final time. Corridors, lights, shadows, whispers, all settle into a new rhythm. The fracture that threatened collapse has become a resonance. Ilara Omari stands at the center, not victorious in the traditional sense, not triumphant over people or systems, but in understanding, in influence, in the quiet power of alignment. She walks slowly through the atrium. Footsteps echo with intention, not hesitation. Every reflection, every shadow, every sound, a signal of the new order she has orchestrated. Crow follows silently. We've done more than survive, he says. We've redefined the rules. We've proven that fracture can become structure, that chaos can become opportunity. Ilara nods. Her eyes trace the corridors, the flickering lights, the echoing footsteps. She sees not danger, she sees potential. The hum of ventilation steadies, lights glow with soft persistence. Paper rests quietly on desks. Doors click open with ease. Shadows stretch, blend, and stabilize. Every detail whispers order. Every reflection confirms her control. Every sound echoes understanding. And she breathes deeply, finally in rhythm with the meridian complex itself. Staffers move naturally now. Some smile, some pause, some work unaware of the orchestration guiding them. The human component, once unpredictable, is now harmonized, not controlled, not dominated, but resonant. Ilara understands power is not possession, it is perception, it is influence, alignment, and clarity. When a system fractures and operators act with insight and humanity, the outcome transcends control. The fracture becomes resonance. Chaos becomes clarity, and those who understand the patterns can guide the currents without ever forcing them. Behind tinted glass, the shadow watches. The loops fail to regain dominance. The observer is no longer master. The hidden hand adjusts slightly, but only to observe the new order. The fracture is transformed. The system has learned something new, and Ilara, she has emerged as the resonance at the heart of it. You've felt this too. The moment when tension dissolves into clarity, when challenge gives way to understanding, when chaos becomes a mirror of your own decisions. Ilara Omari has not conquered. She has harmonized. She has turned fracture into resonance, and in doing so, she has revealed a truth too often overlooked. Power is not domination. It is alignment. It is perception. It is human insight amplified by awareness. The meridian complex pulses quietly. The fracture echoes, but softly now. The lights glow steadily. And somewhere in the corridors, a thought whispers to everyone who walks this path. Control is not taken. It is understood. And those who resonate with it become its unseen center. And maybe this is where everything begins again. Paper rustles with ghostly cadence. Doors click shut with deliberate randomness. Reflections fracture across walls, columns, and floors.